When I'm talking to my friends who are musicians and entertainers, I say, if we have a socialistic government, if we have Marxism, you are going to be the first ones who will be cut off, because the state would have to approve your music. And, you know, Taylor Swift came after me in my 2018 campaign, but Taylor Swift would be the first victim of that, because when you look at Marxist socialist societies, they do not allow women to dress or sing or be on stage or to entertain or the type music that she would have.
Yeah, ever think about that, Taylor? Bet you haven't. Hayes Brown, Megan Hatcher-Mays, and Maria Teresa Kumar are still with us. So here's the thing that I love about that clip, and something that I feel like is actually broadly representative, is that, honestly, I think that the huge animating grievances of the conservative movement right now are cultural. They don't like the fact that Taylor Swift is a liberal, and they don't like the fact that corporations tweet Black Lives Matter, and they don't like the fact that there are commercials about racial equality, and they don't like the fact that they feel that the commanding heights of American culture are occupied by people who are not them. And they're not even wrong in that way. In some ways, like, the cultural sensibilities of the people who do occupy the commanding heights of American culture are not MAGA heads by and large, but there's no actual political solution for it. And so there's this very weird mismatch, which is that all of the animus is riled up about the fact that, like, Taylor Swift is not a conservative, but there's nothing you can do about it. There's no law you can pass. There's no policy. So you have this very weird thing where, like, the actual fuel for the grievance is completely detached from any actual policy program you could ever imagine. And so, Hayes, what you get are, like, the fight, these constant battles about critical race theory in school or Hollywood or woke capital or whatever, because that's the thing you're mad about, and there's no solution for it.
I mean, they could try to pass laws about all of these things. I mean, they're trying to pass laws against critical race theory, but they keep running up against the First Amendment.
Well, that's right. That's
right. Running up against the freedom of speech.
Good point.
They keep trying to. They want to have this world where they can be socially very conservative and fiscally, who even knows anymore, but there's no way to turn that into any sort of policy agenda. And so you have them ranting about things like socialism, and apparently there have been no communist women artists ever, which was really confusing from Senator Blackburn. And I just don't know where they're trying to go with this, except they think that these cultural grievances will push them into power, help them stay in power, because it's shared by this revanchism is shared by the people who they want to vote for them. And then once they're in office, they'll stay in office because they'll be able to say, well, I guess there's no socialism here, so we're doing a great job? ?
I also find the endurance of socialism, Marxism as the focal point of the attack, like, truly wild and somewhat baffling. Mo Brooks was at, I guess, CPAC, decided to do 2 CPACs this year. I just saw a speech of him in Dallas, warning about Marxism. And, like, I think about my departed grandfather, God bless him, Roger Hayes Sr., staunch anti-communist, big right-winger. But, he was around when, like, there was the Soviet Union, the Cold War. It's just, it's wild to me that this has continued down through the generations as such a central talking point, Megan.
That's right. And actually, like, just on the merits, I don't think that Taylor Swift would be the first in line in the Marxist revolution. I think that she's built up a lot of goodwill. I think that, she's somebody who...
She would.
I'm sure, as your viewers know, has spent the last 2 years trying to reclaim ownership of her labor, or her songs in this case. But you're right. I mean, it feels like there's a really big wheel of fortune that conservatives spin once a year and decide what cultural grievance they're going to bring up again. Actually, speaking of critical race theory, when I was in law school back in 2012, I took a critical race theory class, and we were reading Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw and all of this. And at the time, a big scandal that the right was trying to whip up was that Barack Obama in the 90s had hugged Derek Bell and was going to usher in this wave of, like, critical race theories in schools. And so they kind of spun the wheel again, landed on critical race theory again, and they're just going to keep doing it. It's a great boogeyman for them because they don't have to define it. and anything that they don't like can just be critical race theory. So Taylor Swift is critical race theory. This, voting is critical race theory. Anything that they don't like, Harry Potter, books, whatever, that's all critical race theory. And it fits very neatly into this gigantic jug of grievance. And it's very easy for them because they haven't really been able to get attacks on Joe Biden or other Democratic leaders to stick.
That is such a perfect point, though, about Biden. And this is the other weird thing I think about the right discourse and the political discourse in the country right now is at this point in the Obama presidency, there was so much focus on Obama. He riled up the base. He was, and the Tea Party was like about Barack Obama. Now it's like there's not a black man who's president, so they have to go create like one of those like little voodoo avatars and name it whatever, critical race theory. Because that will whip up the frenzy, honestly, that they're looking for because Joe Biden doesn't, Maria. So, again, we're having a bunch of like sequential controversies whipped up to try to fuel that white backlash that can't find its object in Joe Biden in the way that it found it in Barack Obama.
And I think, Chris, if this was done in a vacuum where it was only conversation, then I think it would be easier to shrug it off. But what Blackburn just did, it was that she created an amplification of her disinformation that folks are airing, and it actually gets into our psyche. And at the same time, what we see what's happening in Washington and at the local level of the disenfranchisement of people of color and people who espouse these ideas and progressive policies, that's where the danger happens, is that, one, there's an amplification of this disinformation that clearly Taylor Swift was not going to be the target of Marxist society because Blackburn's opponent was not Marxist. He was a Democrat. At the same time, that amplification does get into people's inability to distinguish with whether or not the Democrats are socialists, number one. But at the same time, the Republicans are actively trying to disenfranchise a vast majority of Americans who do espouse progressive policies, who do believe in climate change, who do believe that we should be talking about race, and recognizing that there is implicit bias. And so that's the challenge. It's not that they don't have power. They have a lot of power, and they're using it in very strategic ways that we will fall victims to it if we don't sound the alarm and saying, house is on fire.
I'm now imagining what a Taylor Swift actual struggle session would look like. I'm trying to conjure that. I'm going to think about that over the weekend. Hayes Brown, Megan Hatcher Mays, Maria Teresa Kumar. Thank you all for joining us.